again, folks. This video I'm going to be discussing another fairly rare kit, although it has been released certainly 2 or 3 times, and it's something I've made quite significant progress with over quite a considerable period of time, but is by no means finished. And here's the box lid, which is on the large side, and as you can see, it's the Revell Shuttle Launch Tower, and this is the complete kit that comes with the shuttle, although more about that later. And the thing about this is I've been working on this for about 10 years, and I've added certainly a lot of upgraded parts to it. And so the video here is going to show you the progress I've made and a new development that has meant that I may actually be reaching the finishing line with this. So I hope you enjoy this video. So the kit itself, this kit originally was just released as the tower and the service structure. And it came out in 1986 according to Scalemates, and then the following year it was released as a sort of combi kit with the shuttle and its base, and that tends to be the more common kit you see, even the older variety. I've very rarely seen the one that's just the structure for sale, and contrary to what I thought, because I thought this had been reissued a number of times, but it's only been reissued once, and that was when this particular one came out in 2014. And that was the last release as far as I'm aware, although Revell does tend to release these kits periodically as kind of limited editions, and it comes from that period in the 80s when they were doing various sort of unusual kits. You know, they did the big huge quarry, what was it, like a kind of bucket wheel excavator type thing. I think that was 1 to 200 scale, and they also did the oil rig, the Shell Cormorant oil rig, I think it was, and again that was kind of like almost like a railway scale. So they did have a bit of form for producing stuff like this, and so when this kit came out, people raved about it. Oh, this is fantastic, look at the detail. By modern standards, it's you know, it is what it is. It's an 80s kit. Some of it is oversimplified, some of it is plain wrong, but to most people it kind of looks like a shuttle tower. But there is a fundamental issue with this kit, and that is that the shuttle itself is 1 to 144th scale, but somewhere along the lines the designers got it wrong, and the tower and the service structure are more like 1/160th scale, and even worse, the base that the shuttle comes on, which when you bought that full stack from Revell, you automatically got this base to stand it on. The MLP, which is the launch platform, is 1 to 200 scale, so it's woefully undersized, and more about that in a moment. So so there was already issues with this kit, but it was reissued in 2014, as I said, and around the same time, a company, I think they were in the Netherlands, I think, called LVM Studios, started producing upgrade detail kits for this kit, presumably based on the original issue one, because the other one came out around the same time as these were issued, and maybe they got wind that it was coming out, or maybe they did a deal with Revell to reissue it at the time to go with this. And basically, they released 5 kits. There was 2 in this box, and I think there was 2 other boxes with kit 1 and then 2 and 3 in the other box. And they came in these A4 cardboard boxes. And at the time that I bought this, which was 2016, they had a bit of a range going. They had stuff available for the Revell and Monogram space kits, you know, sort of detail sets. They did a launch tower, like a complete kit for the Soyuz rocket. I think it was maybe the Airfix Soyuz, I think. And they were talking about various other things. They were developing an Apollo launch tower at the time. And anyway, so I went to Telford that year, and while I was there for the 2 days, I saw the stand that these guys were on, and they had some stuff on display, and they had the frets on display for this, the photo etch frets. And I was pretty impressed by it. At the time, I didn't have the Revell kit. It only just sort of the year before, I think, become available in the UK, and I hadn't bought one. And but I was impressed by this. So even though I didn't have the Revell kit, on the Sunday when it was almost at the point where they were starting to pack up, and I don't know how well they'd done on the day, but I kind of negotiated a deal with them to buy all the upgrade kits for this, and they did me a decent price because they bundled them together. It wasn't cheap, but you know, it was really the only opportunity I'd have to buy it. So I bought the sets, and then after that I managed to find a Revell kit. I think it might have been on eBay, brand new, and so I got hold of that kit as well. And at some point around Christmas time, I started putting it together. So I'll show you the instructions for that one. So with that kit, they came in. They gave you the instructions as like a CD-ROM, and so I printed them all off, all the individual pages, put them in this book, and you can see, I mean, there's a lot of pages in here for all 5 sets, and the instructions are incredibly well detailed, and in some areas they managed to solve the problem of the scale issues between the tower and the shuttle. Not completely, but as far as is possible, given the, you know, the molded parts. So much of the kit is replaced by photo etch. For instance, these are all the floors for the different levels in the tower, and they're all photo etched. They're all slightly different as well. So there's a lot of work. You do all this. You have to measure things. You have to work out where things are going to go. There's some generic instructions for things like staircases, but then other staircases, you just have to use these instructions to build those staircases. And, you know, they show you these exploded views of how things go together. The scale correction parts, they provide some resin parts, and they also ask you to use various sizes of evergreen tubing and square section and things to modify some of the parts. And there's some photo coverage in here, and you know, the instructions go on and on. You detail the lift shafts, and they give you all, every so often there's some photos of the real thing to kind of help you along. Most of the parts are modified, the kit parts. There's very few that don't have something done to them, and you know, all the service arms and everything are detailed or completely replaced. This is the emergency egress system, you know, where they went down off the tower on like these little sort of baskets. They could jump in those and slide down to a bunker where they could shelter if there was a problem. You know, it looked like the thing was going to blow up on the launch pad or whatever. And none of this detail is missed. It goes into massive amounts of detail right the way through, and gives you some orientation pictures of, so you know what level you're working on, and then these are kind of the final assembly instructions, and it just shows you how everything relates to all the other parts. And there's various bits added at the very last minute, you know, once you've done your painting and things. And again, it just goes on and on and on, and all these detail parts, and you have to keep flicking backwards and forwards through the instructions to figure out what fits where. And then these instructions at the back are for the EduCraft MLP and crawler kit. Now they're made in card. Now it was never my intention to build the card models, but I've been using them as templates for scratch building other parts, so you can see all these instructions go on again and again. I won't bore you with those. However, as I said, the fundamental issue with this kit, apart from this is slightly out of scale in relation to this is massively out of scale. So to give you an idea, there's the original Revell, effectively a stand, it's a display stand that represents the MLP, which that's the top piece. I've probably thrown the other pieces away because they weren't up to much, or I might have cut them up for something else. And I used the card model as a template. So here's the top of the card model compared to the Revell part, and you can see the difference. This is 1 to 144 scale. This is correct. This is hugely wrong. It's not even half the size really. So that is essentially just rubbish. So this was cut out of the sheets. They come rolled up in a tube and they're printed, and the idea is you mount these onto some thicker card to produce the strength for the it's more like cartridge paper, this, rather than cardboard. And but as you can see, it's very nicely detailed with the finish. It looks like a, you know, a well-worn launch pad. However, I didn't want to do it like that, so what I've done is I scratch built one out of styrene. So there's the pad. You can see if those towers weren't there, that would sit over the top there, but it's all in scale. And so this this styrene one, I used the parts, the card to form all the different sizes, but there's an awful lot of detail been added to this. If you look maybe at there's one of the side pieces off the card model, and then if I turn that around the other way, you can see where that sort of ties in with the detail on this. And obviously this has all been done in you know, evergreen strip and tubing and bits of there's a bit of aluminium tube in there, you see, various doors and all kinds of stuff. You can see the other end there, it goes round, it's detailed on all sides. This is nowhere near finished yet. This needs gantries and walkways and more piping and stuff added to it. There's pieces fitted on the side which form the legs to hold it up off the concrete base, to act as the, you know, so the crawler can get from underneath it. This was very complex to make because this has got like a sort of compound bevel here. So that was all made out of sheet styrene. The interior of these blast pits here were all detailed out. The one at the very back one, get that, see, turn it around, maybe you might be able to see it better. You can see this is all concrete lined, this on the real thing. So all those pieces had to be made and then drilled and various strips put in. Ironically, these pieces here are the originals off the Revell kit. They're the only part of that base that are at the correct scale. So they're massively overscale on that 1/200 base, but they are correct to the size of the shuttle. So I've used the Revell parts, detailed them, added brass tubing and bits of aluminium tubing and things like that. This was the hardest thing to do. This is kind of like a perforated platform, and this is made out of hundreds of individual tiny bits of styrene that have been cut at an angle and then inserted in between these two layers of plastic and then added to here. And there's a lot more to add to this yet. If I show you these views here, you can see these are some 3D renders that are found on the internet, and you can see there's lots of railings to go on it. There's pipe work. There are these to go in, this is all part of the water suppression system, which I've still to add. I think there's some more better views here. There you go. You can see the suppression system there. I've actually built these, they call them rain birds. It's where all the water pours out when you see the start, you know, before it takes off. I've built these out of brass tubing with styrene top, so I've got those, but all these other pieces have got to be added in. These cones here are the actual explosive bolts that the SRBs sit on, and that's what holds it to the pad before it launches. So all that's got to be added yet. There's another view of it there. So you know, there's quite a bit to do yet. But you know, the thing that was holding me up on this was that although I had a paper version of the crawler that fits underneath this, I didn't want to make it out of paper because obviously it's a nightmare to do. I know people do like making card models, but it's not for me. And I was thinking of scratch building it in styrene, and I didn't really have the references. And although I could have used this as reference, some of the interior parts of it were a bit vague. And then about 3 months ago, I came across a website, and I'll put the link up to the website, showing me where there was loads of research on there, and then they created these files for an Apollo era crawler, and then they'd done an upgrade for the shuttle era crawler, and there's not much difference in them, but it's all 3D files that can be 3D printed, and I've got a couple of 3D printers, so I'm going to start printing them up. Now I did a rough test the other day just to see that the scale was correct, because their files are actually 1/160th scale. I don't know who's building you know, Apollo rockets at 1/160 scale, but somebody is. But so I use those, and I've scaled them all down. I've downloaded them all. I've scaled them all down to 1/144th. I've done a quick scale check to make sure everything scales out right, and then I've started some test sort of shots of these. Now these girder parts are parts of the structure that sit underneath this. And there's a lot to do. There's over 100 parts, and that's not including all the track link, all the individual track links for the 4 tractor units. So there's probably, I don't know, about 500 parts in all. So it's going to take a long time for me to print these up, but I've started printing them anyway. So they're getting there, and then eventually I'll be able to start moving on with this. So I've had quite a lot of setbacks with this. You know, I mean, at one point I was doing okay, and then I broke my hand, and I had a year out of modelling. You know, because I couldn't do anything because my hand was useless, and I've got that working again. So in terms of the LVM kit, now I have got a I don't know whether I mentioned this at the start of the video, but I've got a Facebook page with a complete sort of build diary in photographs of using the LVM parts. So I'll put a link up to that. But this is how far I've got with the tower so far. Now this has been painted. It's lucky that in the later stages of the shuttle program where I'm modeling it, they decided that some of the tower was originally in the original red from the Apollo era, and they decided to repaint it, and they painted it grey, and the grey they painted it is pretty much the same colour as automotive primer. So luckily I've managed to just spray it with primer. I am going to weather this slightly. I'm going to do some washes and maybe some weathering powders just to give it a bit of definition, but overall this is the colour it was in reality. They didn't repaint the lift shaft. The lift shaft was made out of concrete with some metal grills. So what you can see here is the lift shaft. Let me just rotate that in my hands. You've got to be careful because it's very, very delicate, this. So what you can see there in the sort of, that's, although it looks like brick red, that's what they call international orange. It's the same colour as they used for the Golden Gate Bridge. So that was the original colour, and then these creamy coloured bits were the actual concrete. And they left that as it was, so they didn't bother painting that. So that's the same as it was in the Apollo era. And you can see here the amount of work that's gone into this, all these individual staircases and interconnecting parts, and the interconnect with the next level. All the levels are perforated. You can see through them there. You can see right the way down. I've had to add all the underside girders out of evergreen, and all these little boxes here, which are kind of, you know, got telemetry equipment in, and, you know, various other bits and pieces. They're like kind of lockers, basically. Well, you can't really see them very well once the sides are on, so I've literally just used a section of evergreen plastic, and they've been painted a complementary grey colour. There's various points where the just turn that round a bit. I'm conscious I don't want to drop it. There's various points where pipe work travels up the tower, and there's trunking, there's like cable trays and all kinds of things. You've got the communication dishes on the top, which in some photos look like they're painted white. I might just redo those in a slightly paler grey just so they stand out a bit. And then all of this is photo etched. All these little walkways and railings and all that kind of stuff, all photo etched. So I'd say this is 80% photo etch, and the only real kit parts are this sort of hole here, which is where the rotating part of the structure fits to. These round girder parts here as they go down, and then the two sides of the tower, and the center of the lift shaft. The lift shaft is all photo etch, but it does have a core made of the original kit part. So you can see that there. There's the thing I mentioned before, the escape section. There's the baskets in. They go down to the ground. Here's the other two pieces of the outside of the tower, and these have mainly got sort of pipe work on, and this is where the rotating service arms attached to. that sort of lead out to the shuttle when it's parked next to the tower. Fair bit of detail added there, and then perhaps the most detailed part is this, which is the rotating service structure. And you can see, I mean, there's a couple of bits that have been primed, but the majority of it is in the bare plastic, and then all the brass added to it to add the detail, and it's just absolutely covered in walkways and gantries and, you know, railings and you name it, staircases. These pipes on the back, originally they give you these resin pipes for this, but they were bent out of shape and I couldn't get them straight, so I replaced them with brass, just used the tips of them for the curves. This little generator housing here is a resin part, and you know, this huge amount of effort gone into this to get this to this stage. Probably certainly over a month's work in that. You can see the staircase there that goes down the side. All this has got to be painted yet, obviously, but luckily the colour is that primer grey colour, so shouldn't be too difficult. And then there's a couple of other pieces. There's the crane, which is this was on the tower for quite a few years, and then eventually they took it down. I think it might have come down around the time of, you know, when all the shuttles were grounded, when Challenger crashed, and so they used the time to sort of get rid of this, and you don't see it on later launches. So I may use this, I may not. It depends on what launch I decide to do. And there's another part here. This is part of the rotating structure again. This has there's two little sort of railway bogies go on here. There's a little cab on the front, and this travels in a track like that around to bring the structure around to cover the shuttle. And again, this is this part here. These round girders are the kit parts, and then this has all been added. Again, complete stairwell, all added from brass, and it wraps around the kit part. So for a bit of detail there. And then the final thing worth mentioning for this is the decals. Now I'm using the Airfix shuttle because it's by far and away the best 1/44 scale. It is actually being reissued this year as well, although I've got 2 or 3 in the stash. I'll be using those. And the kit I'm using came from around the time they were working with Hella, and they had the molds, and these decals are pretty poor. They're not very well printed. There's a couple out of register. These are just like little black blobs, and the colours are all wrong on everything. So, and for some reason they gave me 3 copies of this in the one box for some reason, but they're not being used. What I have got, if any of you are on Facebook, and some of you may follow Dana, who she's in Texas. I think she's a trucker by day, but she also does a lot of model making, and she produced these a few years ago. I got a couple of sets off her, and basically they're depicting the burnt, scorched underside of the shuttle, which I think that looks pretty realistic, to be honest, when it's on the model. I think she did them for the Dragon kit, but they should fit the Airfix one as well. These represent some of the darker, sort of discoloured tiles on the sides of the fuselage. and she also gives you the little panels that they have over the windows prior to launch, which are useful. So I'm going to combine those with, I've got this Warbird set, which originally I quite liked this grey tile pattern here, but I think I prefer Dana's, so I'm going to go with Dana's for the bottom. I'm going to use these for the top, but I'm going to weather these down a little bit. And I've also got the complementary sheet, which is this is for the tail fin and round the back end of the engines and the nose, and you know, all the names and logos and everything. So I'll be using those as well. But at least the colours are correct on this one. So that's the decals. I've not decided on which shuttle to model yet, but I'll get round to that. So so the plan going forward now is to do the 3D printing for the crawler, which is going to take me some time, to be honest, and then eventually I'll get the crawler built and painted. I'll finish the MLP off onto the crawler, and then eventually I'll finish doing the tower and obviously the shuttle, and the whole thing's going to be combined onto a base, which is going to represent the big concrete, you know, sort of launch area. That's going to have the flame trench built into it, and the railway track that this thing rolls on. There are some other elements of the pad that aren't included in this, which I'm going to have to scratch build. There's another kind of gantry section that sits to this side of the MLP, and I'll just see how I get on with it basically, and what I can incorporate. Eventually, hopefully, it's not going to be in time for this year's Telford, but maybe the following year, I might be able to get it finished to the point where I'll be able to take it and display it at Telford. The plan is to make this that it can be sort of disassembled and stored safely in a separate box, and then taken out and just latched on, maybe using magnets or whatever, onto the base when the base is assembled. And that way I'd be able to make it modular to be able to travel with it, so I can get it to a couple of shows, because it'd be nice to get people to see it in the flesh, so to speak, rather than just on a video. So that's the plan. It's strange what happened to LVM, in the sense that I don't really know what happened to them. They just seem to disappear. The odd thing is that I've never seen another one of these built. If you search for it online, the only photos you'll find is either from their defunct website or their pictures that I've taken and put on Facebook. So the only one I've ever seen other than the one I've got was one came up for sale. A guy had either inherited it or he picked it up in a job lot of models he'd bought, and it was kind of half done, and it was thrown in the box with all the other parts in the big Revell box, and some of the sheets were bent, and it was in a real mess, and he was selling it just to get rid of it basically, because I don't think he was interested in building it. And it was on eBay, and it still went for quite a lot of money, but I wouldn't really want to be the person that's going to build it, because I mean, there could have been parts missing or damaged or whatever. So, and it's complicated enough to build it as is without having to start looking to scratch build things. So, but as I say, I've never seen another one. So whether they sold any more than you know, the one I bought and the one that was on eBay, or maybe people are just sitting on them hoping they're either going to increase in value, which they probably already have, or it's just too complicated for most people to build. They bought them, looked at them, put them back in the box, and again, they may start showing up in estate sales and things, you know, when people people sort of leave them behind. So you know, it could be that I'm the only person on earth with this this kit in any kind of state of completion. So if you like this video, obviously like it, subscribe if you're interested in seeing anything else, and as I said, I'll put the links up to the Facebook album so you'll be able to see what it looked like as I was putting it together. And if I do any more to it, I'll put some more photos there. I don't think I'll be doing a build video as such, but I will maybe do another video as it starts to come together, and you know, just see what it looks like in its finished state. But it's a long way off at the moment. It's going to take me a month or so to print all those parts, and then I've got to assemble them for the crawler, paint it, and then carry on with this. And you know, there's a lot to do yet. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. I suppose this could be in my category of rare kits that you never see, and you know, you might have got something out of it, or you might get something out of looking at the photos. So thanks for watching as usual, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.